Good afternoon again. Hi, I'm Jim Behar, and I work for a company called Relentless Solutions that went through a couple of name changes since I founded it, but that's been my journey, and life's mission is to provide solutions in a nonstop way, and that's where the name came from, Relentless Solutions. But before I go too far into me, required, I think everybody by now pretty much has the app, but that's the requisite slide. So I got my start working on a computer in 1982, typing on a screen of all things. I was working for an attorney, and I don't know how that turned into, I just love to solve business problems, but that's what it turned into. I love communities. MSP GeekCon last year was my first kind of foray back into this level of a conference where it was very technical. Most of the other conferences were business oriented in recent years, but I really found that I fit better here because even though I'm a business owner, I'm still quite a tech, and that's part of the name of this story is the internal struggle. I'm kind of an accounting nerd. I probably should have been a CPA, but I chose really not to follow that path. I had to get out of school. I think a lot of technical people go through some change at some point in their life, and maybe they wanted to be a doctor, or their family said they had to be a lawyer, or whatever their journey was, something drove them to solve technical problems. And that's how most of us ended up here. Everybody I talk to has some kind of story that got them here. And it usually didn't start with, when I grow up, I want to be a technician, or I want to be an MSP. It doesn't usually start there. As a business owner, it's kind of hard to say that I'm not a salesperson, but I'm really not. People buy from me because I talk about their problems in a way that inspires confidence, I guess. The piece of me that's kind of focused on accounting is what makes the business processes always get sharpened, whether it's for a customer or for ourselves. But before I continue too much, I want to take a quick second. I want to run this little voting thing here. I want to know who's in the audience because the slides are I can change the direction depending on the audience a little bit. So I want to know who's here.
Question on this?
Yeah.
Would other be considered like say a member of management?
Yeah, member of management, or you work at a vendor or something, you're just not in an MSP,
Okay.
And in case you couldn't tell, I love Schitt's Creek, so. If you haven't seen that show and you really want to laugh, okay, so we do have a good amount of owners, probably very technical owners, I would imagine. Is that, from the owners, is that pretty spot on? Okay. So with that said, let me jump back here and continue this. But first, why are we here? It's a struggle. Every day you wake up and you know you're the owner and you carry certain baggage because you're the owner, but you're probably technical. And if you're technical and you want to become an owner, you have to know that it's not all glitz and glamour, and you have to know that your tech is only going to get you so far. There's all these business things that come up that you probably don't ever want to have to deal with, but you have to deal with them. So a little story. So I wake up almost every day and I have a great plan. And then the day happens. I have appointments, I have tasks that I just, I want to punch my list, I want to cross it off. I'm like everybody else. My passions get in the way a lot. My team needs me, they pull like a thread, They come to me either as an escalation point because they're completely stuck. They come to me for advice. They come to me for an idea. And sometimes they just come to me because they are having a not such a great day. So there's a psychological component, and I'll tell you now because I'll tell you at some point later, I've spent thousands of hours in therapy because I'm not going to give you a single answer. Your answer is going to depend on you. It's going to depend on your day. But I'm going to tell you that the one thing that you're going to do is make mistakes. And some of them are going to be big. And some of them are going to be costly. And it doesn't matter if they're costly to you personally, if they're costly to your company, to the MSP, or they're costly to the customer. They cost you inside. No matter what you do, those mistakes cost you. But they also teach you. They make you stronger. They make you more analytical. And the more technical you are, the more analytical you'll become. The less technical you are, and you want to be more in management roles, you're going to find that there are people who are smarter than you. There are people who are brilliant at what they do, and you can hire them to do those things that you can't do effectively. Because when you're straddling these two worlds, it's very hard to do everything by yourself, and you have to rely on a team. I got there by accident because I started out in the women's clothing business after that lawyer job, and I was in the family business. It was my dad's business, and I just wanted to do the technology side, but my dad didn't want that. He wanted me to run the business with him. And I just really didn't want to do that. I wanted to be in technology. And so I made this grandiose leap, and I said, I'm leaving. And of course, that didn't go over very well. And my dad was definitely like the exact opposite of technological. He was actually anti-technological. Everything with technology, he wanted nothing to do with it. But he knew one thing. He knew how to sell women's clothing, typically wholesale, but he had both wholesale and retail operations. And he looked at me and said, you have an inventory problem. In 40 hours, you ran out of inventory. What are you going to sell? Who are you going to be able to sell time to if you run out of time? You can't sell it. I had a plan. He didn't have a plan. It took a while. I started out in a business with two partners almost right away, and it taught me a lesson about shared responsibility. I went from not owning a business to a three-way partnership with 10 employees, service vans, the whole nine, in a day where the term MSP didn't exist. We were VARs. And a VAR meant that you had to add value. And it took maybe the first year of that business for me to understand that. And the second year of that business for me to understand that the only person out of the 13 people that took the time to understand what adding value meant was me. So I spent the last year in that business trying to get shared knowledge about what does adding value mean. And some people got it, and they were really good, and they flourished later as we exited and split that business apart. They understood what that meant. But to me, it always meant that the customer goes first. And that doesn't mean that they're always right. The customer's always right. Maybe that's true in like regular retail. In our business, we have to educate our customers. So this history lesson about my dad and the inventory and the time, it took a while even after exiting that three-way partnership to understand that as a business owner, you have to have a 360-degree view. And if you're a technician trying to aspire to be a big business owner, you need to have awareness that that 360-degree view isn't born in everyone, and it doesn't just like land on you through divine, it just doesn't arrive. You can go to school, you can get as many degrees as you want. There are things that are going to come up for a technical person in running an MSP that are not things you're going to learn in school. And the reverse is also true. If you are wanting to just be the business owner and you want to hire people, you're going to have to understand some of the technical aspects of running an MSP. It doesn't work otherwise. You could maybe hire people and then it works, but you're going to have to scale with people. And that comes back to 40 hours is not enough time. I don't want to delude anybody here by telling you that I work 40 hours a week. I definitely work a lot more than 40 hours a week, but that's a choice, okay? And I think in my travels throughout years in this industry, I've seen that people that work a lot of hours fall into a couple of different categories. The first category is like me. They're passionate about what they do, and it doesn't matter what role they play. There's people who work a lot of hours because they don't know how to get out of the hamster wheel. And then there's this third genre, which they've sort of figured it out, and they live a role, they hire other roles, and they shy away from aspects of business that don't suit the way their mindset works or the way their team is structured. Some might say that a little bit of that is not as entrepreneurial, but that is definitely a lot more common in a very structured MSP that grows with size and scale and departments and hierarchies and all of that stuff. In my opinion, those larger organizations at times have a lot of people that individual people can make a lot of money, but some of those people making a lot of money aren't necessarily happy. And so with the good of all that structure, there's some balance that people have to find. And as we get through the slides, you'll see that I'm going to talk about some things that technical people generally don't want to know, but you need to know. So managing and balancing your day, wearing all these hats and flipping around all these roles, yes, sometimes I have to be the janitor. It's just the truth. I wake up in the morning and I want to be the CEO and I want to have my tasks. But what I've found is that while I am not great at any one of these things, okay, I'm great at doing what I love to do, and that is solving customer problems. So you don't have to have a very fancy or special title or a certain department. You just have to understand what your passion is, and that will catapult your success. If you're technical and you're aspiring to be an owner, the more of those buckets and departments that you hit and learn from before you make that kind of leap or investment, the better off you're going to be, because that'll help you decide which pieces you can be involved in and which pieces you should never be involved in. I still feel like I could have some better work-life balance, but I have structure in my life that I created out of some level of necessity to get things into a pattern that at least I could live with, right? That doesn't mean the days are perfect. The days happen and they're not perfect. Wake up in the morning, I go to the gym, I come back and I take my time and I eat my breakfast. That's when I allow the day to begin. Those are not negotiable. A day without breakfast, I won't function. A day without the gym, it happens when I travel or if I'm really sick and I'm going to get someone else sick. But otherwise, those are not negotiable because those are the things that give me my balance, okay? Everybody has different things that make them happy. If you have kids and the kids are what makes you happy and you need to be the one to take them to school, then take your kids to school. You know, you have to know what's right for you and decide in this balancing act, where are you, and are you able to set things aside when you need to and prioritize when you need to. You can't be great at everything. There's no such thing. I'd love to think that I know how to do every job in my company. I'd love to think that. I know that I can't do them. I might know what the steps and tasks are. I might know who the vendors are. I might know who the customers are. But you can't do everything. There's no way that you could do everything and keep your customers happy and keep your team happy and then be happy yourself. Failures, they're inevitable. They're inevitable. I make mistakes all the time. Catch me, I think tomorrow there's a never have I ever session. I will tell you about never have I ever, and oh my God, did I do it. Mental health is key to success. I'm going to take a minute and go outside of owning an MSP or being a tech or whatever. Mental health is everything. If you don't find peace at some point, I don't know how many of you attended Jason Slagle's thing this morning, breathing. That is reality. If you don't find a way to take care of your mental health, you will get burnt out. You'll start making mistakes, not the kind of mistakes that teach you things, the kind of mistakes that are costly and are not recoverable. If you need to go to therapy, there's no shame. If you need to find a community, there's no shame. Talking about your problems is how you solve them. Sometimes I solve the most complex technical problems while I'm walking my dog. I don't know how, it just pops in. It's a moment of clarity. Talking about your struggles. I don't remember exactly the timeline, but I used to be somewhat gun shy to talk about the things that I struggled with in business, and maybe it's a sign of age or longevity in business, but I've lost my filter. Somebody wants to talk about a struggle, I'll commiserate with them to the end of the day, because it's another form of mental health. And your intrinsic rewards from doing the things that you love to do, it's the best fuel ever. I don't know how to quantify. I can go to the gym 7 days a week and I will get a fuel. Nothing fuels me like solving a customer problem, either with really like a lot of technology or with low tech, no tech. To them, I solved their problem. To me, all I did was I made a phone call. So your successes are going to be wherever they are. But the intrinsic rewards, the one thing I'll tell you, I'm not a good patter on the backer kind of guy to my team. I suck at doing that. Some days when I have a lot to do, and most of my team is remote, but some days when we have a lot to do, I might start the day by saying, please and thank you for the last week and for the next 2 weeks, and let's just keep going. Because when you're with the same people all the time, it's sometimes easy to take it for granted, but more importantly, sometimes it's just you got to get on with the day, and it's easy to forget. But no matter what, prioritization is everything, and I try to prioritize my day. My role doesn't really let me be like true to myself 100% of the time. But that's because I allow my role to change. I'm not telling you that my way is the best. I can tell you I struggle a lot because I try to take on a lot. There's things where I'm like told I'm the gatekeeper, but I'm a paranoid security guy, probably for a good reason, you know? So there's a balance that you're gonna find in different aspects of your business. But you have to decide what's most important to you and know what you're good at. If you don't take the time to figure out what you're good at, you could love doing something and you still suck at it. That doesn't mean don't do it at all, but you should definitely have somebody check your work. don't get stuck. I mean, I don't know how to tell you don't get stuck. In a way, I'm like, me and my sister, we come from a family of guaranteed procrastinators. We don't start something until the day before it's due because that's how it's going to be good. That doesn't mean we don't plan, and that doesn't mean we don't delegate, but it's, our finish line has to be nearby. But you have to quiet the squeaky wheels in that process, because squeaky wheels eat up your brain capacity faster than anything else. My way of quieting squeaky wheels is by delegating away the squeaky wheels as quickly as I can. Sometimes it doesn't work. They'll be squeaky anyway. Same way I have no verbal filter, I've developed an audible filter. You have to learn how to let some of those things go. And again, back to prioritizing your mental health. Some of these other things, I'll give you the slides. I don't want to spend time reading the slides too much, but I want to tell you a couple of little nuggets that will go along with this prioritize and build. Smart people are everywhere. And if you could learn to let go of some pillar of what you do, and you could hire smart people to do those things for you, there's a liberty that comes from letting things go. There's a polarizing aspect to that, and that's profitability, right? When you let something go, you're kind of letting go of profitability, right? You don't know what the outcome is going to be when you're delegating that to someone else. They might be smarter than you, but that doesn't mean that they're going to look at it economically in the same way that you'll look at it from an economy perspective. The time investment, the tools used, the outcomes, the deliverables, the total time to delivery, what is the hourly cost, what's the overhead. There's all kinds of, pieces of the puzzle that sometimes the teammates don't know, or the person you're delegating to, for all, however smart they are, they don't understand those profitability markers that a business owner might need to understand. So when people don't understand that, use that as an upskill moment. Try to teach them about profitability. Not everybody's going to get it. I'm going to talk a little bit more about profitability here in a couple more slides. But don't be afraid of advice either, because you never know who's going to give you that sage piece of advice. I mean, you don't know. It could be a hairdresser, or it could be, someone who works at a customer's place. Don't discount advice. When you're looking to solve a problem, you'll find the answer in the most bizarre places. So just know that as you go through this prioritization and building process, you have to ask yourself questions over and over and over again. And sometimes it's just about putting things in a row. Other times it's about building an answer that's going to be long-lasting, that you can hand down to your team. So on this rinse, repeat, and monetize, I don't remember which philosopher, Socrates, I don't know, one of those people said, create repeatable processes. And this was in the philosophical times, right? We're living in a world where automation is king, and that's one of the fastest ways to economies of scale. And there are issues with thinking that everything can be automated. It has to start with documentation or defining. And if you don't take the time to do it, just because you know doesn't mean everybody else knows. Just because you know doesn't mean everybody else can follow. Just because you know doesn't mean it's programmable. So there are instances where you need to take a step back and understand that not everybody, even your most technical people, won't have a comprehension of the business aspects that surround a deliverable. You need to remember to charge for it. Whatever it is, I'm back to that profitable thing. You need to make sure that you're getting value for the work that you're delivering. And I'm notorious for saying, God, that's 5 minutes of work, stop. I can do it fast in my mind, but when you go to do things, there's all these inevitable stumbling blocks. I know I have a remote connection to every one of these machines. I can start this process on 10 machines at once until I get a phone call, or until the fourth machine decides that it's not going to play nice or whatever. So I'm not saying that things can't be fast. Things can be fast, but slow and steady wins. And if my own team hears me, they'll probably say that I'm a liar for saying that, but it's true. I know it in the overall picture. That doesn't let me take my foot off the gas pedal. I like to do things as quickly as possible. I like to do the efficiencies, but I know that if you take the time to calculate the outcome is better than if you just wing it and fly off the seat of your pants because you know. So, work fam. How many of you guys spend more time with your family than with your work fam? I don't see, oh, one?
I had to think about how you asked the question, that's why I'm not raising my hand.
Okay. So you spend more time with your real family, your spouse, children, brother, sister, parents, whatever, versus your work family. More with your family? Good for you. There's 4 people in here. Good for you. You figured out some way to get that balance. Where I'm going with this isn't so much about the time as it is about the harmony. Because if you bring your work home, you're going to ruin that harmony. If you don't treat your work family like family and try to find harmony, that doesn't mean there won't be conflict. Conflict is actually great when it can be turned into something productive. But if you don't take the time to find harmony and find commonality, it becomes very difficult to work with people. And that's especially true when there's toxic people in the environment. And learning how to, everybody in your entire life, you have to learn how to deal with each person. No 2 people need to be dealt with in the same way. And you can learn how to, everybody has their own level of social skill, and particularly, I'm the first one. When I say the word propeller head, I'm the first propeller head. I don't want anybody to think it's derogatory. I'm the first propeller head, but I'm also very social, so I'm kind of like oxymoronic in that way. But I also know how to relate to the very propeller head people that have 0 social skills. I talk to them about the technical things that they like to talk about, and we find common ground. And when there's toxic in the environment, it hurts everybody in the team. So from a team perspective, if you see toxic and you're dealing with toxic, you either need to remove yourself from that situation or you need to have that person removed from the situation. And that doesn't mean that they're terrible people. They might actually be brilliant, but toxic people, it spreads like wildfire throughout an organization. It took me a long time, I want to say it was like 12 years to really realize that quiet doesn't mean non-toxic. I had silent toxicity running rampantly through the veins of my business, and it was a family member, and it was really hard. But when it was done, it was like 10 elephants were removed from my chest. And I live to tell about it because thousands of hours of therapy. Cultivating a positive environment. I need to take that medicine more myself. I know it, it's real, but finding the happy outcome and finding the happiness in what you do every day. When you look at financial statements all day and you're structuring meetings all day and you're attending meetings all day and it's now 7 o'clock and you just want to finally take a break, it's really hard to find positivity, and I really didn't get up from my chair for 10 hours today. But if you really kind of rewind and look back at the outcome of your day, there's always positive. It's remembering that the people that you interact with throughout the day, they might have had a hard day too. So when you do have those kind of like late meetings or even just challenging meetings, just remember, human first, right? Social awkwardness aside, we all have good days, bad days, and if it sounds like I'm getting too psychological, remember, business owners are psychologists without a degree, and you have to always remember that even if that's not your day-to-day role, your team looks upon you as like this problem solver for their happiness in the work fam. All right. This is the one that usually blows every technical person's mind. I've had this conversation with a lot of technical people and it doesn't go well. Profit does not equal greed, and profit does not equal wealth. At an L1 tech level, sometimes that doesn't seem truthful, especially in one of those more larger structured MSPs. It seems like that's not possibly true. I don't care what the size of the MSP is, one-man shop, 500-man shop. Those are not equal. You could be profitable and not be greedy. You could be profitable and not wealthy. They don't necessarily reconcile, but what you do should feel profitable to you. And I'm going to ask a question, and if anybody wants to dial into it, I'll go deeper. But to me, people that don't understand the first two don't understand that profitability is not about money, always. It's about, this is what I can bill for something or charge for something or deliver, right? It doesn't matter tangible or intangible. This is what it costs me, which might be blood, sweat, and tears. It might be money. It might be time. It might be all of those things. And the profit is what's left over to make you feel good, okay? And if you're not the business owner controlling the checkbook, you still have a checkbook for your bank. But I'm not talking about that kind of profit. I'm talking about the inside of you profit. If you can't measure that, I don't want to tell you to go take an accounting class to go learn how to measure that, but you need to take like a self-accounting class to learn how to measure that, because ultimately what I'm dialing back to is that you have to find your passion, because without your passion, you can't find internal profit, and without internal profit, there's no point in transitioning from L1 to L2, or from L2 to leadership, or from leadership to ownership, or deciding in some cases that you don't want to be an owner or shouldn't be an owner, and you want to go back into another role. So profitability means different things to each person. And what I would ask you to do is take a minute before I continue and ask yourself, do you know where your profit lives? Because if you don't, I might ask you a couple of questions that might help you find it. You may not find it right now, but at least I'll plant some seeds that'll let you go to tomorrow with a question. And success at the end of whatever you're doing, whether it's because you've delivered and you've gotten a signature on a piece of paper, or it's success because you're running an application and it told you it was successful, or because the customer said thank you at the end, it's only one ingredient of the profit. You still have to feel good with the outcome, okay? Anybody have any questions about self-determining their profit? Okay. So now I'm going to be a little bit more business-oriented, a little bit. Financial awareness is very powerful. And I'm going to tell you that when you look at your bank account, that's only one measure. If you can get to a point where you're happy and you're not stressed about money, I'm going to tell you a little story. The only times I've ever had to worry about money in my life was when I worried about money. If you don't worry about it, it will be fine. If you do the other things that are like about running a business or running the business of running yourself, and you don't let money stress you out. I'm not saying that money's not important, but you can't let money stress you out, because if money becomes your stressor, you're no longer doing all those other things I talked about. You're only focused on that. And I'm not saying don't worry at all. I'm not saying be irresponsible with money. God only knows I've wasted more money on technological gadgets than it's ridiculous. But that doesn't mean that I regret what I've done along the path. Sometimes, depends on, either your upbringing or your social circles or whatever, there's pressure to be at a certain financial level. You don't have to measure up to anybody ever. You have to measure up to yourself. And that self-worth piece is worth everything when you're working in this type of pressure cooker environment. Every MSP is like a pressure cooker, because I know as a business owner, I've been told, oh, because you've never really had a boss, right? I have many bosses. Every client is a boss. And so it's actually much harder than having one boss to respond to. But in your business, if you're a tech and you don't understand how your company makes money, you should wonder. You should. Because that's where your paycheck comes from, and that's part of your internal profit. And if you don't take the time to understand that, there's a possibility that management will notice that, and that means you're not really that invested a little bit. There's parts of that might be true. Some businesses don't want to share that information, and that may be okay too. I don't really subscribe to that. If somebody asks a question and they're coming at it from a perspective of what they'd like to know about the business, or what they'd like to know how they can contribute, or they'd like to know how they can grow. If you don't ask, you won't know. You can assume all kinds of things. And then from the business owner perspective, you should wonder if your employees or your techs or your marketing people or your salespeople understand that their paychecks don't arrive like through magic carpets into their bank account, right? Like, do they understand what overhead is? At some company meeting that we had a few years back, one of our techs looked up and said, "We make money on hardware," like with a face like bewildered, like I was hurting him. I was like, of course we make money on everything we do. Are we always profitable at the end? No, we try to make money on every transaction, and every aspect of every transaction should have a intention of being profitable. But he was mind-boggled that we actually buy it for less money than we sell it for. Blew his mind. And he didn't last much longer after that. I know that for me, it was a little bit hard to open up completely about profitability, but it wasn't that hard, because the truth is, in all the years I've been in this business, I've never once had a year where we closed the books and did our accounting and whatever, and I wasn't profitable. Some years more than others, but it's important that you take lock, stock, and barrel in understanding that it's through intention, it's not by accident, and it's not something that doesn't take work. It takes so much work, because you have to have your eyes on so many different things, and that doesn't mean incidents won't occur. Insurance increases come out of God only knows where. Those don't make any sense, right? But company vehicles and travel and conferences and tools for your team to use, looking at them and understanding them and owning every line of the P&L. Like, I'm doing something with a coach right now. He's like, you land way too many things in dues and subscriptions. And I'm like, I do it on purpose because I know how much it is and I'd rather not know. Because some things are just expensive. And I know how much they are because I'm not a fool. I know what we sign up for. But some things are better not overanalyzed. They are what they are, and they're tools to make your business work. And it's important that you just acknowledge and move on. Don't dwell, because it'll eat you up. I'm going to keep saying this. Don't let your passion go. I don't care what role you're going to play in your business. If you let your passion go, you're dying inside. You have to be true to yourself. I'm going to give you an example of what not to do. If your first love is programming on a Commodore 64, I think you need to find a new passion, okay? If your passion is programming, but you want to be the business owner, but you don't know how to have employees, there's something you have to reconcile there, right? I know that there's entire things I never want to let go of, but I let go all the time because I don't have a choice. There's things that I don't want to let go of, and so now I'm partnering on them so that I'm not really letting go, but I'm letting go enough that it doesn't take away my whole day, and the things that I can't finish, somebody else will finish for me. Bring it. Bring it is, it is IT, right? That's what we do. Scott is a guy that works in my office. He's a friend for 17, 18 years, but he's been working there now for like a couple, 3 years. He didn't come in to be a COO, but that's kind of what he became. And he does a lot of things that kind of he has to because he's the COO, but they're not necessarily his favorite things. But he's done a lot with that last statement there with our team. See it, own it, solve it. Okay? I used to say something different, which was, you all need to look around the corner. It's not just what's in front of your eyes. That didn't resonate, right? People hear, but they don't comprehend necessarily. See it, own it, solve it is a lot more clear. If you see something and you know how to solve it, and you don't think that you have the authority to solve it, just talk about it. Bring it up. Share it with your team. It works both upward and downward. I could see something, but I can't really own it. I have to send it downward and have somebody else own it. That doesn't mean that I let it go. So see it, own it, solve it is a really big empowering thing that you can give to your team, because at the end of the day, you're all looking for the same outcome, right? Profitability, whether it's your own personal or the business profitability. And that passion driving through, it's important. And I don't think that there's any coincidence that that expression about dotting I's and crossing T's lands in IT, because if we don't do it for our customers, heaven knows they won't do it, right? So, ownership thinking. Sometimes people come from different backgrounds, and it's perfectly okay if they never were fortunate enough to have abundance in their life. If they're working for a client and a client is very potentially out there, people who don't come from that may feel challenged to work in those types of environments. That doesn't mean they should bring any less of their prowess and their genius to solve problems for that customer, because those differences in personality, in upbringing, in background, they become invisible at those moments. They don't exist. okay? The superhero inside the techie guy that just came up with a plan or a solution for this otherwise eccentric business person, there's a thankfulness that will exist that maybe just in a social setting didn't exist or wouldn't exist, but all of a sudden it exists, and there's a respect that elevates the one that maybe didn't have, and it humbles the one that had. And that middle ground is happy for everyone. So that open the shirt, but it doesn't have the S, doesn't mean that they're not a superhero to that guy. That Zig Ziglar saying is, it's one of the things that I've heard it since I was a child, not in exactly that way, but the same sentiment. If you're not willing to learn, I mean, there is no corollary really. I mean, the thought is finished, right? But if you're not willing to learn from day-to-day running your business, from day-to-day interacting with customers, from your vendors, from your peers, if you're not willing to learn, there's no way you can grow. And I'm back to the profit thing. Your personal profit suffers if you're not willing to learn, because somebody can always teach you something. If you're determined to learn, nobody can stop you. There's this term that goes around now in a lot of these conferences about servant leadership, and I think somebody may actually have trademarked that name or that terminology, and there's all these white papers on servant leadership, but at the end of the day, that's what we are. We're here to, the entire livelihood of an MSP is about protecting and solving for our clients that they're busy doing what they do. They could have a shoe store, they could have a food store, they could be a doctor, they could be a dentist. It doesn't matter what they do. They should run their business, and we should help them run the technology of their business. And we exist to serve, and that should be one of the components of your profitability, is to understand that, and it's that maybe that comment I made before about having 100 bosses at the same time, that servant leadership mentality, it helps to solidify that trusted advisor piece, where you want that relationship, and you're not going to get that from every single one of your customers. Some people will just, they're happy to pay your bill and they're happy to do it, but they won't have that extreme gratitude. Doesn't mean that you don't get to take it back, okay? Because there's something to learn from every one of those experiences. Some good reading. I didn't come up with all this stuff on my own. I said I spent a lot of hours in therapy. I've had numerous business coaches over the years. There's some books that I have read. I think Hug Your People is, from the title, I already didn't want to read it. But it's a really good book. Worth Doing Wrong. I literally just started that. It's not necessarily a hard read, but it's the way my brain works. It's a little bit of a tough start, but I'm committed to reading through that book. The ones on the bottom, Ownership Mindset's been on my reading list for a long time, but this Worth Doing Wrong thing, somebody like literally, I don't want to say they took a chisel and a hammer to me, but more or less, I was told you need to start thinking about that. I already have the ownership mindset. I want to read it so that then I could tell other people in my org to read it. I think sharing books that are maybe owner mindset type of things with techs, and techs sharing any books that they find value in reading up to management creates common ground that's worth it. One thing is for sure, no two people are going to get the same thing out of any one read, and no two people are going to get the same benefit out of the nuggets that you steal from each one of these things. So, you know, like some of these books may not work for some of your businesses. I'm not necessarily recommending them. These are just where some of my thoughts and my planning and my growth has come from. So With that said, I want to kind of flip this back, and there's a mic. And anybody have any questions about any of the things that we talked about, concepts or whatever? I'm all ears.
I'm gonna need a mic, I'll talk loud, thank
Okay.
you. But really on this last thing, I really try to read also, but just hearing everything you're saying, when do you find time to read? No, seriously, not as a joke.
No. I'm gonna explain. So you would think I take a lot of time to read. So in brutal honesty, as a young child, I have pretty bad OCD and ADHD, both. So finishing a book is either very doable in a very short amount of time or a very big challenge over a 3-month or 4-month period of time. It just depends on where my brain is and what else is going on. As a child, I was forced to go to one of those things that you saw on television where they teach you how to speed read. And I read absurdly quickly if I'm interested. I read absurdly quickly when it's technical. When it's painful, like worth doing wrong, because it goes contra some of my mindset, that doesn't mean I'm not going to learn from it. It's difficult and it'll take time. So the when question is really, really simple. A, somebody inspires me or tells me I need to read something, I'll probably read it. I'll at least give it a shot. The other part of the when, there's bodily functions that we all perform. It's the best time to read. And the other thing that I'll tell you is that I'm not a good vacation taker. I'm somewhat always work-minded. So I might go on vacation and load 1 or 2 books on my Kindle, and between the flight time, the travel time, the downtime, the I'm waiting to go on a tour time, whatever, that's when I'll catch time to read. If it's very technical, you might give it to me today and it might be finished by tomorrow, and I still manage to get, I don't even know how many hours of real work done. It really depends. I think that you have to decide to make it a priority if you think that whatever book it is going to give you value. Somebody else had a hand up before, but I don't remember who. Anybody? Are we close? Yeah. We've got 4 minutes. Yeah. All right. So if anybody wants to find me, I'm an MSP geek on the forums. If anybody wants my card, I'm glad to talk about whatever. Thank you all. Thank you.